pasted on the window, yet I sat alone all night in the icy bridal room. My newlywed husband, David, spent the night in the next room accompanying his distant cousin, Lena, who had scraped her knee. I was a military wife. He was an officer. This marriage was something my family secured only after pulling countless strings. In everyone's eyes, I was the one who should have felt grateful, the one marrying above my station. In my past life, I believed the same. So, I endured. On our wedding night, when he abandoned me to take care of his cousin, I endured. The next day, when he tried to take the fabric vouchers my mother had given me as part of my dowry to make new clothes for the frightened Lena, I endured that, too. I endured my mother-in-law's constant disdain, endured Lena's manipulative sweetness, endured David's repeated coldness and betrayal. I sent him my salary, every subsidy my parents gave me, everything, all to David's family. I only wanted the reputation of a virtuous wife, someone who wouldn't tarnish his military career. And the result? I worked myself into illness. When I needed money most to seek treatment, David's family couldn't give me even a penny. David, however, used the money I had saved through hardship and frugality to buy Lena a house in the city. Their entire family moved into the new home while I died alone on a cold hospital bed. In the moment I closed my eyes, the only thought I had was that if I could live again, I would never allow myself to be this pathetic. I never expected it to actually happen. When I opened my eyes again, I had returned to that absurd wedding night. The door creaked open, and David walked in with the cold night air still clinging to him. He was still wearing his brand-new military uniform, his sharp features full of impatience. "Why aren't you asleep yet?" he demanded, as if my staying awake had been a serious mistake. I lifted my eyes and quietly looked at him. This face had once been the spell I was obsessed with for half a lifetime. Yet now it felt painfully ironic. "I was waiting for you," I said calmly. He paused, probably not expecting such a composed reaction from me. In my past life, I cried the whole night and woke the next morning with swollen eyes. When he saw me, the undisguised disgust on his face was unforgettable. "Waiting for me? Lena is weak. She scraped a big patch of skin. I had to stay with her until she finished her medication," he said, completely matter of fact. It was as if that were 100 times more important than our wedding night. "She finished her medication?" I asked. "Yes, she's asleep now." "Then can you fulfill your responsibility as a husband?" I asked. David's frown deepened. He looked me up and down, his gaze filled with scrutiny and unfamiliarity. "Emily, what's wrong with you today? Why are you talking like this? Aren't you usually the sensible one? Lena is my cousin. We grew up together. She's a guest here. She got hurt. What's wrong with me taking care of her?" I laughed. The word sensible was a poison blade that had stabbed me all my life. "It's nothing. Go to sleep." I didn't want to say another useless word. I lay down, pulled the blanket over myself, and turned my back to him. David seemed irritated by my attitude, but after fussing around all night, he was exhausted. He let out a heavy grunt and lay down fully dressed on the other side of the bed. We didn't say a word the entire night. A clear barrier separated the two of us. I kept my eyes shut, but my mind was racing. I didn't return to fight with him, nor to compete for affection. I came back for myself. To reclaim everything that belonged to me, to live properly this time. My dowry, aside from the bedding and furniture, the most important things were the few $100 my mom secretly tucked into the bottom of my trunk. It also included 100 feet of fabric vouchers. In the early 1980s, that amount of money and those vouchers were a fortune. In my past life, early the next morning, David's mother, my mother-in-law Linda, joined forces with David, pried open my dowry trunk. They took every bit of the money and fabric vouchers without hesitation. There was no way I would let them get their way in this lifetime. Just as dawn barely broke, I heard Lena's delicate syrupy voice coming from the next room. Her voice mixed with Linda's doting words of comfort to her precious darling. I immediately got up and quietly opened my dowry trunk. It was brand new, still decorated with the red double happiness sticker. I pulled out the little metal box hidden at the very bottom. Inside was a stack of crisp bills and a thick pile of fabric vouchers. That was all the security I had in this life. I carefully hid the money and vouchers close to my body, then grabbed a few sheets of old newspaper, crumpled them up. I stuffed the crumpled paper into the now empty metal box. After that, I restored everything in the trunk to its original appearance. Only once all of that was done did I slowly begin brushing my hair. The person in the mirror still looked young and untouched by time. Her eyes carried none of the exhaustion or numbness from the last lifetime, only a cold, sharp clarity. A sudden, rough pounding on the door sounded, followed by Linda's loud, grating voice. "Look at the time. You're still sleeping. The sun's already shining on your backside. Hurry up and come out to make breakfast." I ignored her and continued brushing my long hair at an unhurried pace. Soon, the door was shoved open with a loud bang. Linda stood at the doorway with her hands on her hips, her triangular eyes glaring fiercely at me. "What kind of daughter-in-law are you? You expect your mother-in-law to serve you? Are you deaf? I've been calling you forever and you didn't answer." I looked at her through the mirror and slowly spoke my mind. "Mom, why didn't you knock before coming in?" Linda clearly didn't expect me to talk back. She froze for a moment, then her face flushed bright red with overwhelming anger. "You little brat, your wings are getting hard, huh? How dare you talk to me like that? David, look at the wife you married." David walked in behind her with a dark and stormy expression. He had already changed out of his military uniform and was now wearing a white shirt. The plain shirt only emphasized how tall and straight he stood in stature. But the words that came out of his mouth were sharp and cutting, meant to wound. "Emily, how can you talk to Mom like that? Apologize at once." I stood up, turned around, and looked calmly at the two of them side by side. "What did I say wrong?" Linda pointed at me, so furious she could barely speak a full sentence. David's face grew even darker with rising frustration. He took a deep breath, clearly holding back his boiling anger. "Enough. Forget that for now. Take out your fabric vouchers." Just as I expected, I pretended not to understand his demanding request. "Why do you need the fabric vouchers?" Before David could answer, Linda rushed to speak first, her tone full of righteous indignation. She acted as if every word she said was perfectly reasonable and justified. "What do you mean, why?" "To make a new dress for Lena, of course. She's a young, unmarried girl, came all the way here to attend your wedding, and she ended up falling and getting hurt. She was scared half to death by the accident. Making her a new dress to calm her nerves is the least we can do as her hosts." I almost laughed out loud at her ridiculous reasoning. Scraping her knee required using the fabric vouchers my mom gave me as part of my dowry to make her a new dress? What kind of twisted and selfish logic was that? "Mom, those were part of my dowry. My mother gave them to me personally," I reminded her firmly. "Your dowry? Once you marry into David's family, you belong to us entirely. Your things are naturally ours, too. Stop talking nonsense and hand them over right now." Linda snapped sharply, stepping forward as if she intended to rummage through my things herself. David stopped her, maybe still wanting to maintain the appearance of being the educated and rational one. He looked at me, his tone slightly gentler than before. David's tone softened only slightly, but it still carried an unquestionable sense of command. "Emily, I know you feel wronged, but Lena isn't an outsider. Give us the vouchers first, so she can make a new dress. I'll make it up to you once I get my allowance, okay?" I let out a small, cold laugh at his empty promise. "And when is once you get your allowance? How long is that supposed to be? And can your monthly allowance truly buy 100 feet of expensive fabric?" David's face turned an ugly shade, like darkened liver tainted with resentment. Most of his allowance had to be sent home to support his parents and his good-for-nothing younger brother. He barely had any pocket money left for his own daily expenses. "What kind of attitude is that?" he snapped, anger rising because I had struck a raw nerve. "I'm just stating the plain facts," I said, meeting his eyes without fear or humility. "The fabric vouchers are mine. I don't want to give them to you." Lena, who had been hiding by the doorway eavesdropping the entire time, finally stepped timidly into the room. Her eyes were misty and watery, her hand holding tightly onto the doorframe. She acted as if her weak, trembling body could collapse to the ground at any moment. David, Emily, please don't fight because of me. I don't need a new dress. It was my fault for being careless and getting hurt. It has nothing to do with Emily. If she doesn't want to give them, then forget it entirely. I can just wear something old and plain as always. As she spoke, tears streamed down her cheeks like broken pearls, falling in delicate, pitiful drops. She really was a perfect white lotus in full bloom, putting on a flawless act of vulnerability. David's heart clenched the moment he saw her crying helplessly. He immediately turned toward me and glared with unbridled disappointment. Emily, look at what you've done to Lena. Is your heart made of cold stone? It's just a few fabric vouchers. Do you really have to be so petty and stingy? Linda chimed in right away, backing him up with harsh criticism. I've never seen such a stingy and ungrateful daughter-in-law in my life. Our family must have had the worst luck in 8 generations to end up with someone like you. If you're not handing them over willingly, then don't expect any breakfast today. I stared at this ugly trio and felt nothing but deep disgust in my chest. I took a deep breath, then unexpectedly smiled calmly at their threats. Fine. You want them, right? I walked to my dowry trunk and deliberately acted heartbroken as I slowly unlocked it. Linda and Lena's eyes lit up at once like 2 hungry wolves spotting fresh meat. Even David let out a breath of relief, his expression saying he thought I was finally being sensible. I opened the trunk and took out the small metal box hidden inside. The money and the vouchers are all in here, I said in a dull voice. Linda snatched it from my hand immediately and opened it without the slightest hesitation. The next second, her shrill shriek nearly shook the entire roof off the house. Why is it just trash paper inside? Inside the metal box were only a few crumpled pieces of old newspaper. In disbelief, Linda turned the box upside down, shaking it again and again in a frantic rage. When nothing valuable came out, she threw the box onto the floor in explosive fury. Where's the money? Where are the fabric vouchers? Emily, where did you hide all of them? She lunged at me like a madwoman out of control, but I stepped aside easily, dodging her reckless attack. David stormed toward me with a dark expression and grabbed my wrist tightly. He squeezed so hard it felt like he might crush my bones in his grip. Emily, you'd better give me a proper explanation right this second. I yanked my wrist free and rubbed the bright red marks left by his cruel grip. Then I looked at him with cold, unyielding eyes. Explain what? You're the ones who insisted on opening my private trunk. Something went missing, so who am I supposed to answer to? You? You were the only one who touched this trunk last night, Linda shouted accusingly. Oh? I raised an eyebrow in quiet mockery. Who exactly saw that with their own eyes? It was my wedding night. My husband wasn't even in the room with me. Who knows if a random thief snuck in while everyone was distracted? Don't talk nonsense, David growled lowly in warning. There's no way a thief could easily get into this tightly guarded house. Well, I said calmly and indifferently, you never truly know what could happen behind closed doors. I shot a meaningful glance in Lena's direction, hinting at hidden possibilities. After all, some people were willing to do anything for a little petty benefit. Lena's face instantly went deathly pale, her lips trembling uncontrollably. Emily, what do you mean by that? Are you openly accusing me? I didn't mention any specific names, I said with a casual shrug of my shoulders. That's enough petty provocation, David snapped as he roughly dragged me aside. Lowering his voice, he spoke through clenched teeth in a menacing tone. Emily, I'm warning you. Stop making a reckless scene. Hand over the hidden things now, or our life together will be completely impossible. Threatening me? I looked at his face, twisted with anger and greed, and found it utterly laughable. David, our life together became impossible the moment you abandoned me on our wedding night to accompany your cousin. I stopped paying attention to their furious reactions and walked straight to the wooden wardrobe. I took out the small cloth bundle I had already carefully prepared in advance. What are you doing? David asked wearily, eyeing my every move. I can't stay in this suffocating house anymore, I said calmly and firmly. Where exactly are you planning on going? Back to my parents' place to file a proper complaint about how I've been treated. Linda sneered with undisguised contempt and malice. I'm telling you, if you dare step out of this door today, don't ever come crawling back. I wasn't planning on coming back anyway. I opened the bundle and pulled out a folded sheet of paper, unfolding it right in front of their eyes. It was a southbound train ticket, scheduled for departure at 10:00 a.m. this very morning. David's pupils shrank sharply in pure shock and panic. Linda and Lena were stunned speechless as well, frozen in place. They never would have imagined that not only had I hidden the money and fabric vouchers well, but I had also bought a train ticket ahead of time. When did you even have the chance to buy that? David's voice trembled with disbelief. While you were busy whispering sweetly with your precious cousin all night long, I replied plainly. I carefully folded the ticket back into the cloth bundle for safekeeping. I didn't hide the fabric vouchers. I exchanged them for this ticket and for travel spending money. Of course, that was nothing but a well-crafted lie. I still had all the money and vouchers safely hidden on my person. They were my vital seed capital for a new life, but I needed to crush any greedy hope they had left. You useless, reckless girl. You actually exchanged those precious fabric vouchers? Linda shook with overwhelming fury, pointing a trembling finger at me, unable to form a complete sentence. Emily, have you completely lost your mind? David finally snapped out of his state of shock and lunged toward me to grab my bundle. You're not allowed to leave this house. Our marriage just started. If you leave suddenly like this, how am I supposed to explain myself to others? What will the military unit think of my character and conduct? He had only ever cared about his own reputation and future prospects. I sidestepped his desperate grab and let out a cold, mocking laugh. Your reputation matters more than your marriage and your wife? Is that the truth, David? Don't worry. I won't cause unnecessary trouble for you or your career. I took out another piece of paper from the bundle and slapped it firmly onto the wooden table. I've already written the divorce request in full detail. As long as you file it with the military unit promptly, we can finalize our divorce. That way you won't have to worry about a so-called crazy wife ruining your bright future. The word divorce hit them like a devastating thunderbolt out of a clear sky. David and Linda both froze completely, caught off guard by my bold move. In this era, divorce was a massive social scandal, especially a military-related divorce. It wouldn't just be deeply humiliating, it would follow someone for their entire life. You dare to propose a divorce? David's eyes were bloodshot, like an enraged beast cornered with no way out. Emily, I'm telling you clearly, I won't agree to a divorce. If you want to leave, go ahead and do as you please. When you finally come to your senses, you can come back and apologize to me and Mom humbly. He thought I was still the same weak woman from my past life, the one he could crush under his thumb at will. He thought all he had to do was put on a tough face to make me yield. I had always been someone he thought would get scared easily, someone who would compromise for peace. I looked straight at him and said clearly, word by word with unshakable resolve. David, you're seriously mistaken. I'm not discussing this matter with you. I'm simply telling you my decision. I will divorce you no matter what. If you refuse to file the request, then I'll go to your military unit myself. I will explain everything that has happened to your superiors in full. David's face instantly turned ghostly pale with cold fear. Interfering with a military marriage was a serious criminal offense back then. Even if there was no hard evidence of anything inappropriate between him and Lena, the facts spoke for themselves. The truth that he disappeared the entire wedding night to stay with his cousin was enough to raise serious suspicion. If the matter blew up publicly, his entire promising military career would be completely over. Linda panicked just as badly as her son. She had never imagined that her always obedient and docile daughter-in-law would suddenly become this ruthless and decisive. You venomous, heartless woman, are you trying to destroy our whole family with your reckless actions? She screamed at the top of her lungs, beating her chest and carrying on dramatically like the sky was falling apart. Lena was so terrified she went completely blank with fear, hiding behind David while trembling nonstop. I couldn't be bothered to watch their pathetic, overacted performance any longer. I picked up my small bundle and headed toward the front door without looking back once. Stop right there. David rushed after me in a panic, reaching out to grab my arm forcefully. Without turning around, I spoke in a cold, warning tone. Touch me again and see what happens next. I guarantee that within half an hour, everyone in this entire military compound will hear all about the heroic deeds you pulled off on your wedding night. My voice wasn't loud or shrill, but every word carried a sharp, undeniable threat. David immediately froze in place, too afraid to make another move. He knew perfectly well I was fully capable of doing exactly that. I reached out and slowly opened the wooden front door. The sunlight outside was harsh and bright, but to me it felt like long-awaited freedom. A few early rising neighbors were already outside chatting and going about their morning routines. When they saw me walking out with a small bundle on my back, obvious curiosity flashed across their faces. Linda followed me to the doorway, but didn't dare make a loud scene like before. She lowered her voice and muttered vicious curses under her breath. "You ungrateful wretch, you'll get what's coming to you sooner or later." I didn't look back to acknowledge her hateful words. I straightened my spine and stepped firmly out of the cramped courtyard. It was the same courtyard that had suffocated me for an entire miserable lifetime. Goodbye, David. Goodbye, my foolish and pitiful past life. The train station was crowded and noisy, filled with all kinds of mingled smells and chatter. I clutched the train ticket tightly inside my pocket, my heart pounding with a mix of tension and excitement. When the train whistle finally screeched loudly and the cars slowly began to move forward, I breathed easy. Watching the platform and the uniformed officers slide backward through the window, I finally felt the weight lift from my shoulders. This was all real and happening at last. I had truly escaped that cold, loveless home for good. I leaned back against the hard train seat and watched the fields and villages rush past rapidly outside the window. Memories from my painful past life surged uncontrollably into my mind one after another. I remembered begging David to take me to the hospital when I was seriously ill and in terrible pain. But he brushed me off impatiently, saying I shouldn't be so dramatic and should just endure the suffering quietly. I remembered lying alone in a cold hospital bed on Christmas Eve, high fever burning through my weak body. I called his military unit for help, only for the operator to tell me that David had taken leave. He had left to accompany his cousin on a leisurely shopping trip at the downtown department store. I remembered that after I died a lonely death, my soul floated above the cold hospital room. I watched David and Lena living happily in the new house I had bought with my own blood and sweat. Lena leaned comfortably in his arms, giggling softly as she spoke sweetly. "David, thank goodness that woman died early and left us in peace. Otherwise, we'd never have the good and comfortable life we have today." And David had only tapped her on the nose affectionately and replied gently, "You're truly something else, my dear." Scene after cruel scene cut into my heart like sharp knives twisting deeper and deeper. Tears slid silently down my face, but I didn't bother to wipe them away. Those tears were only for the foolish, pitiful, wronged Emily of my past life. Starting today, I would live solely and unapologetically for myself. The train continued heading steadily south, rocking gently through 3 long days and endless nights. After 3 long days and exhausting nights on the road, the train finally reached its final stop, Shenzhen. The moment I stepped off the train, a gust of hot, humid air rushed over me, wrapping around my body. In the early 1980s, Shenzhen was still just a small fishing village with scattered construction sites and dust everywhere. But the thick summer air was filled with raw vitality and boundless hope for the future. It was nothing like the small, stagnant northern town where I had lived for more than 20 years. Everything here signaled a brand new beginning waiting just for me. I found a cheap little hostel to stay in temporarily. The first thing I did after settling in was count every bit of money and every fabric voucher I had hidden. Altogether, I had 365 yuan and 100 feet of valuable fabric vouchers. At that time, an average worker's monthly salary was merely 30 or 40 yuan. This sum of money was my first pot of gold in this new life. It was what I would rely on to leverage and build a whole new, bright future for myself. I didn't rush to look for an ordinary daily wage job right away. Instead, I spent several days wandering and exploring the busiest commercial parts of Shenzhen. I discovered that the local clothing markets here were already taking initial shape and growing fast. Many traders who came in from Hong Kong brought in stylish new designs from across the border. Their trendy pieces were quite expensive, but still sold out quickly every single day. Meanwhile, the local clothing shops were still selling old-fashioned cool cotton shirts and plain loose blue trousers. That obvious gap was exactly where my golden opportunity lay. In my past life, even though I lived poorly and without any dignity, I had learned excellent sewing skills. I had practiced hard just to please David's demanding family back then. My mom had been a skilled seamstress when she was young, and I grew up watching her work day in and day out. I had picked up quite a bit of professional sewing techniques and tailoring skills myself. More importantly, I had locked in my mind the popular fashion trends from the next several decades. I clearly knew what styles would sweep the nation and become wildly popular soon. I made up my mind to start my new career with making and selling trendy clothes. Using my fabric vouchers and part of my saved money, I bought a batch of good quality cotton and soft cool cotton fabric. Then I gritted my teeth and spent a large sum to purchase a second-hand Butterfly brand sewing machine. Since I couldn't stay in the small hostel long-term due to cost, I rented a small, inexpensive private room. During the day, I carefully observed and studied the local market demands and customer preferences. At night, I sketched fashionable designs, cut fabric patterns, and sewed clothes under a dim flickering light. The first batch of clothes I made were trendy bell-bottom pants and stylish bat-wing tops. These were styles that were already taking the whole country by storm in big cities. But in this tiny backward fishing village, they were considered bold and outrageous by conservative locals. I couldn't afford to rent a proper shop yet, so I followed what other small vendors did. I set up a small simple stall at the bustling night market every evening. On the first day, no one dared to come near my eye-catching stall. Occasionally, someone would glance over with obvious curiosity and quiet disdain. "What kind of strange pants are these? The legs are ridiculously huge and wide. Looks like something an opera performer would wear on stage. So improper and unseemly for ordinary people." I didn't get discouraged or give up easily. I knew new things and bold styles always needed time for conservative people to slowly accept them. But the second day and the third day passed slowly, and still, no one stopped to ask about my clothes. I started to feel a growing sense of anxiety deep inside. I didn't bring much spare money with me when I left home, and every passing day meant more daily expenses. If I couldn't sell these clothes soon, I would run out of savings completely. Just when I was about to lose all hope and give up, a crucial turning point finally appeared. That night, several fashionable young women passed by my humble stall while chatting happily. One of the girls immediately noticed a pair of bright red bell-bottom pants I had hung up to display. "Boss, how much are these eye-catching pants?" 15 yuan, I said calmly, fully aware it was an undeniably high local price. "So expensive for a single pair of pants?" one of her friends muttered in surprise. "You can take a closer look at the fine craftsmanship and high-quality fabric," I said gently and confidently. The girl picked up the pants carefully, held them against herself to imagine the fit. She rubbed the soft material between her fingers to feel the texture. She was clearly deeply tempted by the unique style and good quality. She hesitated for a long time, weighing the cost and her liking, but in the end, she gritted her teeth and bought them. "If they don't look good when I wear them out, I'm coming back to find you for a refund. Come anytime if you have any problems," I said with a gentle, reassuring smile. That single successful sale was like a powerful shot of adrenaline, filling me with new hope and motivation again. Sure enough, just 2 days later, that same girl returned to my night market stall. She brought several of her close friends with her, all eager and excited. "Boss, these pants are absolutely amazing. When I wore them out walking around, the heads turning were like 200%. All my friends were so jealous of my new trendy outfit. Do you have any other colors in this style?" And just like that, my small business suddenly opened up completely. My bell-bottom pants and bat-wing tops quickly became the hottest items in the entire night market. Every night, large crowds of young people gathered around my small stall to browse and buy. I earned my first real fortune since coming south to Shenzhen, a full 500 yuan in pure profit. I used that earnings to expand my small production scale step by step. I rented a larger space to serve as both a storage warehouse and a dedicated workshop. I also hired 2 quick-handed local women to help me with cutting and sewing. Bit by bit, my small clothing business found solid footing and began to grow steadily. Just when I thought life would keep moving forward smoothly and peacefully, David unexpectedly showed up. That day, I was busy in my workshop rushing to finish bulk orders for wholesale clients. A neighboring vendor hurried over in a panic to deliver a message. They told me a man in neat military uniform was asking for me at the entrance of the narrow alley. My heart tightened sharply at the familiar description. I rushed out of the workshop in a hurry, and there he was, standing right in the alley. David. He looked noticeably thinner than he had a few months ago, and his skin was darker from travel. But his military uniform was still neat, crisp and sharp as always. He had been going from door to door asking locals about a woman named Emily. When he spotted me walking out, he froze for a second in shock. Then overwhelming joy exploded brightly in his eyes. "Emily, I finally found you at long last." He hurried toward me quickly with eager steps. I instinctively stepped back a few paces, looking at him with cold, distant eyes. "What exactly are you doing here in Shenzhen?" My obvious indifference froze the bright smile on his face instantly. Frowning with clear displeasure and frustration, he spoke sharply. "What am I doing here? I'm looking for my legal wife. What else would I be doing? You ran off without a single word of notice. Do you have any idea how much time and effort it took for me to track you down?" "I'm no longer your wife in any sense," I said flatly and without hesitation. "We have absolutely nothing to do with each other anymore." "Nonsense. I never agreed to your ridiculous divorce request. You'll always be my legal wife, no matter where you run off to," David snapped angrily. He reached out and grabbed my arm tightly in a rough grip. "Let go of me at once." I struggled hard to break free from his hold. Neighbors around us began gathering to watch the commotion, pointing and whispering among themselves. "Emily, this your husband? Handsome fellow in uniform. Just a simple couple's quarrel, huh? Such things happen to every married pair. Go home together and make up, you two. Don't make a public scene." Hearing these casual comments, David's face lit up with arrogant pride. He took the onlooker's words as support for himself and tried to drag me away forcefully. "Come back home with me right now. Stop making a fool of yourself out here in public." "I'm not going anywhere with you." I clung tightly to the wooden doorframe of the courtyard and spoke with unyielding determination. "David, I'll say it one more time clearly. I want a formal divorce. In your wildest dreams." Our heated argument drew even more curious onlookers over to watch. Right then, a deep, steady voice cut through the noisy chatter and tension. "Let go of her immediately." I turned around quickly and saw a tall man standing quietly behind the crowd. At some point, he had walked right up without anyone noticing his arrival. He wore a simple white shirt and dark formal trousers, looking calm and low-key. His presence carried a quiet, imposing aura, his gaze sharp and clear. It was Ray, my quiet and reserved neighbor from the rented room area. I only knew he was a local businessman, someone who rarely went out or socialized with others. When we crossed paths in the past, we only exchanged polite small nods as greetings. I never expected him to step in and stand up for me at such a critical moment. David looked him up and down slowly, obvious hostility and wariness flashing in his eyes. "Who exactly are you? What does our private marital issue have to do with you? He told you to let go. Didn't you hear his words clearly?" Ray's voice wasn't loud or aggressive, but it carried an undeniable sense of pressure and authority. David's tight grip on my arm loosened instinctively under the weight of Ray's calm presence. I immediately moved to stand safely behind Ray, gently rubbing the sore red marks David had left on my skin. "Emily, get over here beside me this instant," David barked in anger. "What is your exact relationship with this strange man?" His face was flushed bright red with overwhelming rage and humiliating embarrassment in front of the crowd. I hadn't even spoken a single word in response yet when Ray answered calmly for me. "I'm her landlord. Comrade, if you continue harassing my tenant, I'll have no choice but to call the local police." "Call the police?" David looked at him as if he'd heard the world's funniest joke. "She's my lawfully wedded wife. I'm simply looking for my own wife. What's there to call the police for?" Being a husband does not give you the right to force or harm your wife, Ray countered sharply and reasonably. David was instantly stunned into awkward silence, unable to argue back. The neighbors watching nearby finally began to fully understand the whole situation. The public opinion tide turned completely against David in an instant. That's right, no one should use force on their spouse. Talk things out calmly. Look at the poor girl. She's pale and trembling from fear. David's face flushed red, then paled with shame, then flushed again with suppressed anger. He knew he wasn't going to win this confrontation in front of so many witnesses today. He shot me a vicious, threatening glare, then gave Ray another hostile look full of resentment. He spat out a sharp warning before turning to leave. Emily, just you wait and see. With that cold threat, he stormed off angrily through the crowd and disappeared down the alley. The noisy commotion finally settled down slowly. I turned to Ray and spoke with sincere gratitude in my heart. Thank you so much for helping me, Ray. He simply nodded slightly and spoke in a quiet tone. If he ever comes to harass you again, come find me right away. Then he turned and walked back to his own residence without unnecessary words. Watching his tall, steady figure disappear from sight, a small warm ripple stirred gently in my heart. But I also knew clearly that David wouldn't let this matter go so easily. I had to finalize the divorce paperwork as soon as possible to cut all ties. I hired a reliable local lawyer, paid his fee, and had him write a detailed formal complaint letter. I included every detail about David's cold treatment and inappropriate relationship with Lena. I also listed all the unfair ways his family had mistreated and exploited me throughout the marriage. Then I mailed the complaint directly to the disciplinary department of David's military unit. I wanted to cut the weeds at their roots and end this once and for all. If he cared so deeply about his future career and public reputation, then I would be the one to ruin them completely. After doing all this, I stopped wasting any thought on David entirely. I threw myself fully and wholeheartedly into growing my clothing business. My small business grew steadily day by day. It expanded from a simple night market stall to renting an official storefront on a busy street. I officially put up a wooden signboard reading Emily's Apparel above my shop. My clothing designs were fresh, unique, and fashionable, and the product quality was always excellent and reliable. It didn't take long for my brand name to spread widely throughout the whole of Shenzhen. Clothing vendors from other provinces traveled long distances just to buy my clothes in bulk for resale. My daily life became extremely busy, fulfilling and meaningful for the first time. During this period of growth, Ray helped me a great deal in many silent ways. He arranged trusted workers to supervise the renovation of my new shop to save me trouble. The first time I negotiated with out-of-town wholesalers and didn't understand complex contract terms, he helped me carefully. He went through every legal clause line by line to explain potential risks and benefits. We gradually became familiar with each other through these small interactions. I slowly learned more about Ray's own past and life experience. He had once served in the military before resigning and moving into the business world. He mainly dealt in building materials and had a stable, legitimate source of income. He was honest, steady, thoughtful, and highly reliable in all things. He never pried about my painful past or asked unnecessary personal questions. But whenever I ran into troubles or difficulties, he was always the first person to show up and offer help. My hidden feelings for him slowly began to change and deepen without me even realizing it. About 2 months later, I received a long-awaited letter from my hometown in the north. It was written by a kind distant female cousin on my mother's side. She wrote to inform me that the military had officially approved my divorce request in full. Because of proven conduct issues, David had been issued a serious major demerit on his permanent record. His long-promised, well-deserved promotion was completely cancelled indefinitely. In deep frustration and anger over his ruined future, he hastily applied to leave the military and return home for good. Linda, furious that her son's bright future had been completely ruined, took all her anger out on Lena. She cursed her viciously every single day and constantly called her a walking disaster to their family. Lena finally couldn't endure the endless abuse and blame any longer. She had a huge, explosive fight with Linda and moved back to live with her own original family. David's once tight-knit family completely fell apart and fell into ruin. Reading through every line of the letter, I didn't feel the fierce joy I had once imagined I would have. Instead, I only felt a deep, quiet sense of relief settle over my heart. The cruel people who had once caused me so much pain and suffering had finally received the consequences they truly deserved. And I could finally say a complete, permanent goodbye to my painful past. I was now fully free to begin my brand new life with no lingering chains. Time flew by quickly, and 3 whole years had passed in the blink of an eye. Emily's Apparel was no longer just a small single storefront on a side street. I bought a 3-story commercial property on the busiest, most prosperous street in central Shenzhen. I opened my own large-scale clothing factory and successfully launched my independent clothing brand, QS. My brand's products were now sold in major cities all across the country. I went from a helpless woman who started with nothing but a little dowry money. I gradually became respected as Miss Emily, a successful local female entrepreneur. And naturally, Ray and I officially got together and built a loving relationship. The day he proposed to me was simple and ordinary, no fancy arrangements. There were no expensive flowers, no shining diamond ring, nothing extravagant or exaggerated at all. It was just a quiet ordinary evening after work. He looked at me seriously and sincerely, his eyes full of gentle affection. "Emily, give me a chance. Let me take good care of you for the rest of my life." I smiled warmly as happy tears fell gently down my cheeks. In this precious second lifetime, I had finally found pure, genuine happiness that truly belonged only to me. Our wedding ceremony was simple and low-key, with only a few close friends and business partners in attendance. After we got married, Ray merged his building materials business with my clothing company. He fully supported my career development and never tried to limit or control me. With the two of us working together side by side, our joint business grew bigger and more prosperous year by year. I thought I would never see anyone from David's broken family again for the rest of my life. That was until one unexpected day during a business trip. As a representative local outstanding entrepreneur, I went to Guangzhou to attend a major investment promotion conference. After the meeting ended successfully, I waited for my arranged car at the Grand Hotel entrance. That was when a familiar yet strangely haggard figure suddenly caught my eye. It was a thin woman, disheveled and ragged, clothes torn and dirty. Her hair was dry, yellowed and unkempt, her face exhausted and completely lifeless. She was being roughly pushed out of the luxurious hotel entrance by 2 strict security guards. Please let me in just for a little while. I'm looking for someone important, really. I just need to find one single person," she begged weakly in a hoarse, desperate voice. I stared at her worn, defeated appearance for a long time before I finally recognized who she was. It was Lena, the once delicate, radiant, soft-spoken and well-kept Lena from years ago. How on earth had she fallen and become like this miserable? She seemed to notice my presence too, standing calmly not far away. She stared blankly at me, obvious disbelief and shock filling her sunken eyes. Emily." I didn't respond to her trembling call. I simply looked at her calmly and without emotion. The moment she fully recognized me, she lunged toward me desperately. She moved like someone grabbing onto a final life-saving rope in a raging storm. "Emily, it's really you. Please help me. Lend me some money, please, just a little bit to get by." The hotel security guards immediately stepped forward to hold her back and stop her from rushing at me. "It's fine, you can let her come over," I told them calmly. I stepped closer and asked in a cold, distant tone. "Why exactly are you here looking for me after all these years?" I. Her wandering eyes flicked over my well-tailored designer suit. Her gaze then drifted down to her own filthy, torn rags in bitter contrast. Deep shame, fierce envy, and twisted resentment tangled clearly in her weary gaze. "My cousin and we haven't been doing well at all lately." From her broken, choked, sobbing words, I slowly pieced together everything that had happened in their lives these past few years. After leaving the military in disgrace, David fell into complete ruin and despair. He became heavily addicted to heavy drinking and reckless gambling to numb his frustration. Linda couldn't bear the huge blow of her son's failed future and ruined reputation. She suffered a sudden stroke and became permanently bedridden, requiring constant care. Their small family savings disappeared completely within just a few short months. David also racked up massive gambling debts that they could never hope to repay. Lena's parents firmly refused to let her marry David, calling his family a total hopeless burden. But she had been completely blinded by his false sweet talk and empty promises back then. She had run away from home to be with him regardless of her family's objections. Without my hard-earned money and dowry vouchers supporting their household, David's true ugly nature surfaced quickly. He had no remaining patience, tenderness, or gentle words left for Lena at all. Whenever he got dead drunk or lost a large gambling bet, he would beat her violently to release his anger. The two of them fled south together to Shenzhen, hoping to strike gold and start over. But because they were both lazy, incompetent, and unwilling to work hard, they could only find unstable temporary construction jobs. They lived day to day with no steady income, no fixed home, and no hope for the future. Earlier that same day, Lena had accidentally seen my photo and a business article about me in a local newspaper. It was only then she realized I had become a famous, wealthy major entrepreneur. So she came all the way to Guangzhou looking for me, hoping I would remember our shallow past ties. She begged for me to take pity on them and offer financial help. Past ties. The ridiculous word made me let out a quiet, cold laugh. What past ties could I possibly have with you? Sister-in-law, no, Miss Emily, she corrected herself immediately in fear. I know I was terribly wrong before. I was young and blinded by temptation and selfishness. Please, for the sake of you and David once being husband and wife, have mercy on us. I cut her begging words off sharply without a single trace of sympathy. David and I have had absolutely nothing to do with each other for a long, long time. As for you, I was never close to you to begin with, not even for a moment. Emily, how can you be so heartless and cold-blooded? Seeing that I wasn't moved by her fake pity or weak guilt, Lena finally grew desperate. She tore off her gentle, weak mask completely and screamed at me in raw rage. If you hadn't been so cold and heartless back then, how would we have ended up suffering like this? Now that you're rich and successful, you look down on us and refuse to help, don't you? Your money and good fortune should have included our fair share to begin with. I looked at her face, twisted by overwhelming panic, greed, and bitter resentment. All I felt in my heart was a mix of shallow pity and quiet ridicule. Even after everything that had happened, she still refused to reflect on her own mistakes. She still blamed the cruel world and others for her own miserable misfortune instead of herself. I pulled several 100 yuan bills neatly from my wallet and tossed them lightly at her dirty feet. This money isn't for you to squander or support your lazy life. It's only enough for a one-way train ticket home. Don't ever let me see you again. Without another single glance at her pathetic state, I turned and walked toward the waiting car. Ray gently opened the car door and helped me inside with quiet consideration. As the car slowly pulled away from the hotel entrance, I looked back through the rearview mirror. I saw Lena collapsing onto the dirty ground in despair. She grabbed the scattered money one moment, then cursed and screamed angrily at our leaving car the next. She looked like a complete lunatic broken by life's hardships. I looked away calmly and leaned my head gently on Ray's warm shoulder. It's all over now, he whispered softly as he held my hand tightly in his. I nodded slowly and closed my eyes in peaceful contentment. Yes, every last bit of my past nightmare had long scattered into thin smoke and dust. In this wonderful lifetime, I had a loving husband who truly cherished me. I had a successful career I built with my own 2 hands and endless hard work. I had a bright, dazzling future stretching out ahead of me. Outside the car window, the countless city lights flickered on one by one like a glittering river of stars at night. I knew deeply in my heart that the best, most beautiful years of my life had only just truly begun.